Okay, great. Welcome to the November meeting of the North America Research Interest Group. Very glad to have you all with us. This month, we are going to feature 3 projects from the Red Hat BU Collaboratory. These are student projects that have been proposed and carried out by students with mentors from the university and in some cases also from Red Hat. So we're looking forward to hearing about how these projects went and what they're going to lead to in further open source activities. So we'd like to start out with Shun Zhang, who will be talking about democratized data collection and collaborative training for extreme scale autonomous systems.
Okay, thank you. Gonna share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
That looks good. Yep.
Yep.
All right. So, hello everyone. My name is Shun, and I'm very glad and happy to share with you our work, the D Collective. I'm currently an undergrad student, senior here in Boston University, major in computer engineering. So firstly, I want to thank all my mentors, Zhang, who's my PhD student mentor, and Professor Eshed Ohn-Bar, and thanks for his resources from his lab H2X, Human to Everything. We also want to thank Red Hat for this opportunity, and so we can share with you guys today. So let's get started. So firstly, I want to start with the motivation of this project. So we all know that the data collection is the foundation of the autonomous driving. But however, the real-world data collection can be very costly and slow. As you can see here, this is an example of the Waymo data collection. You need sensors, lidars, drivers, vehicles, and cameras, which all cost you a lot of money. And also, focusing on these open source data sets can be very slow because like if you only use these open source data sets, it's like you have to wait for them to upgrade and it usually takes a long time. And also, even if we conquer all these problems with millions of data, like real world data collection is still like a drop in the ocean for all the real world scenarios. Like in this videos here, it's showing the autonomous driving Tesla car, and they got to crash it into a truck. And the main reason is like, this is very rare situations, and it doesn't train it during their autonomous driving system because like a truck flipped on the highway. This is very rare situations, and you don't usually see this in open source data sets. And so we want to fix that. And another problem we want to fix is that for now, there's no current standardized benchmarks for the real world decision making. And so most companies, they are doing like dealing with data and training with stuff with their own, but they don't collaborate with each other. And so they don't have a standardized benchmark for this. And most of the decision making autonomous driving system is based on the simulation stuff, but we want to keep it into real world. And so that's our motivation. And that leads to our goal of the project. So our key idea is about collaboration. So we want to do and create a standardized benchmark and OpenShift-based development framework for open source autonomous system at scale. So you can see this picture from the left bottom. This is our ideal future vision. So the vision is like everyone from anywhere in the world can help to collaborate with our autonomous driving system, and then we can train a model that can suit many places in the world. Because for now, it's very hard for you to imagine, like, for example, you train a model here in Boston with the data here collected in Boston and use it, for example, way far in Singapore. But now, with the scalability and more diverse data, we can share and train a model that suits many more places. And here is you can see here, we compare the independent and collaborative learning. Collaborative one has much better scalability and efficiency. And we also want to fix about the privacy and security problems because collaborative often comes up with this problem. So our ideal goal is to create a low cost and easy data collection with data privacy preservation. So let's dive into what we did for this project. We want to start with the data sets that we do and we use this for this project. So we combined 3 different data sets: Motional's New Things, the AlgoVerts, and Google's Waymo's dataset. And these datasets contains information from all over the United States. Like this is the examples from the AlgoVerts 2. And in Motional's New Things datasets, we even have data from Singapore. And take AlgoVerts as an example, we have over 5 hours of total driving with GPS, RGB images, LiDAR, IMU readings, all these informations. And so we want to proceed the raw data to extract the image-based future coordinates. That's our first step. So what that means is you can see here, this the AlgoVerts 2 datasets provide us with something called the Eagle vehicle position, which is the relative position of the vehicle in the coordinates of the whole city. And so what we did is we project that these 3D coordinates and project it into another coordinates based on the car itself. And so in this way, we're going to know the position of the car in the future several seconds. And then use that way, we can create and know the driving paths of the future of this vehicle and use that to create something called a waypoint. And so it's kind of easier to understand the waypoint with this model. So we have a model for images to the future plane. And for this one, it's we use a state-of-the-art driving model that learns to converge RGB images for a future plane. So this is the structure of it. This is based on the previous work of our lab. You can see it's called a self-D, written by some of the PhD students and Professor Eshed Ohn-Bar. It's a CVPR paper early in this year. You can search for that if you are interested in this. So what this is actually doing is we take RGB images, and then we can calculate out the speed of it because we know the difference in time and the difference in the distance because we have the coordinates of the vehicle itself. And then we have 3 different waypoints, like 3 possible ways of the car is going, either turning left, turning right, or going straight. And then compare with the ground truth, we select the one that is actually going and use that as the application of this training. So it's easier to understand this waypoint stuff with this video here. So you can see the blue point is a ground truth, and the orange point is our model prediction. So with this 5 waypoints, we can know the speed of the car, the turning angle of the car, either it's going straight or it's going left or right with what angle. This is what we call a real-world decision-making based model. And you can see here for this model, the prediction and the ground truth is kind of converges, which is pretty cool. And so we also integrate this on the OpenShift. We train and test it, run on the OpenShift provided by Red Hat. Thanks for that. And so the first step we got to improve with this model is we add a geographical aware version. So the self-D model itself, it's not geographical aware. It doesn't know which city it's in, or we say it assumes all the data it collects is in the same city with the same geographical feature. But however, that is not the truth. For in this project, we focus on the scalability and the diversity, which means there's going to be a variety of the geographical features where we train and learn from different cities. So we add another layer here called geographical location. This is a 6 by 122 matrix. Each line represents a city with 122 dimensions. So in this way, during the training, when we have the information of the city, we compare that with this matrix, and we're going to know, well, which city it's in, what kind of geographical features it have, and in that, we're going to select the different parameters for different city training. which is kind of like a personalization of each different cities in our training, which kind of improve our performance. You can see the table here. The matrix we use is called the final displacement error, which is short for FDE for later. It's kind of easy to understand. As you can see the picture here, we have points of the future path of the car. So the FDE means the difference of the final point of this waypoint. So for example, 2.7 means the final difference of the ground truth, and our prediction has a 2.7 meters difference. So we want this FDE to be as low as possible because like meters of difference in the traffic driving is going to be very harmful. So we're trying to decrease this FDE. And you can see here the geographical aware model indeed help to improve the performance. And this is only like 6 cities in the America. What if we have more diversity, like information from different countries, from different continents? This geographical aware version is going to help a lot with more diverse data. And here comes another problem. Like, what if someone don't want to share raw data? Because we call for collaborations. But the problem is if we only use centralized learning, we're going to have to need the raw data. But some of the people, for example, they don't want their driving data or driving video to be shared with everyone else. And some companies and corporations, it takes them a lot of time and cost to collect those data. And so they don't want to just share it with everyone else, which is totally reasonable. So we provide this federated training structure. So this picture shows the basic structure of how it works. So we have a server here. It has a global model. And for each training run, you're going to pass this global model to the local agents. And these local agents here with the global model and the data they have on their hands, they're going to do a local training and also evaluation. After they're doing that, they're going to send the result of the training, like the SGD result, the weighted result, send that back to the server. And the server is going to do global averaging with these informations, operations, and use that averaged result as the operation of this training round to the global model. And then we'll do it again, pass the new model to the agents, and they're going to do in this cycle. So the good part of this is like for agents, they are collaborating with each other, but they don't really share raw data with each other or the server. So this can better protect their privacy. And so how about the result of it? So we know because federated training, it provides you with better privacy, but since it's not centralized, it can't be as good as the centralized learning. The performance is going to decrease for somehow, but we want to decrease this. We don't want to sacrifice this performance too much, so we're going to try to fix about that problem. So the first way we try with the federated training is using the most naive way, like the structure we talked before, using the simple averaging. And the performance is not very good as much. You can see here in this first line, the error is like about twice of the upper bound. And so we have to improve that. We add a batch normalization. And of course, that batch normalization is in the local part because batch normalization has some information of the raw data. We don't want the servers to know about that. So after we do a local batch normalization in the local size, we find out that improve our performance a lot. You can see here the FDE is significantly decreased. And another thing I want to mention about is called differential privacy. So to understand that, let's go back to the structure of this federated training stuff. So when the local agents send data back to the server, in order to better protect their privacy, we don't want them to share just the raw information, like the weight information, SGD result, to the server, because that can be dangerous. for their privacy. So when they upgrade and send their result to the server, we add something called a random noise sigma. So the server gets the help from them, but they don't actually get the exact same value of the result of the local agents. But there's another problem with this, because adding minimal differential privacy significantly degrades the model performance. As you can see here, if the noise sigma is 0.01, the FDE is acceptable. But however, when we increase that into like 0.1, it will significantly harm our performance of the model. So this is the part that we're still gonna do more researches on, because we're gonna try to find a balance between it. We want to protect your privacy while it doesn't sacrifice too much of the performance of the model. And besides that, we also leverage our navigation framework for providing us some scalable assistance, because our lab is human to everything, not just autonomous driving. We also have this nice wearable assistance that can help some visually impaired person to find their car. Like, this is a motional car. We have a cooperation with them during the summer. And the system can tell the visually impaired people like where to go, what obstacles in front of them, like stairs, trees, stuff, which is pretty cool. And these are some future works and challenges we still need to do and try to conquer. So firstly, it's kind of difficult to aggregate data from different cities and countries with different traffic rules, cameras. We still need more study on that, because for now we only have the geographical aware, which is good, but we might need more parameters on the personalization stuff. To take an easy example, some of the countries drive on the right side of the way, some countries drive on the left side of the way. So we're probably gonna add that as a parameters to personalize the training also. And another thing is the privacy and safety trade-off. Like we talked about before, the random noisy sigma stuff, we're gonna find a balance between it. And also how to incentivize the participations and collaborations. We're currently being discussed with some autonomous driving companies, and we find out that most companies interested in this project is small companies, because like big companies like Waymo, Google has enough money and resources for them, but smaller companies, they want to improve their performance, but they don't have enough money and resources for data collection, so they can collaborate with each other without sharing real data. So this is beneficial for them. And also for the OpenShift, we want to implement communication between nodes with OpenShift for federated training. And because for now, different nodes on the OpenShift cannot communicate with each other. So if we want to do this on the OpenShift for the federated training, we're going to have to fix this problem also. And that's all. Still want to thank Red Hat for this opportunity for us to share with you. And thank you all for listening now. I think there's a QA part.
So anyone has any questions, feel free to speak up or put them in the chat. I have one question, Shun. Since you talked about the 3 data sets you had at the beginning, presumably those have no privacy issues associated with them. They're data sets that were made publicly available. How did that happen?
Yeah, so because currently we don't have the informations and data collected from those private and federated training stuff. So this is like we are trying to improve the algorithm itself to have a better performance with the federated training. And after we do that, we're considering about collecting data from other companies, which is not open resources. And we're also discussing with some companies, and if they're interested in this kind of project, they might provide us with some of the data they have, and they try to use this federated training to try the performance of the model.
So the 3 that you had that you used, did those come from companies or from governments or from people driving around and recording what they were doing? Like, how did you get them?
Okay, so that's open resources data sets on the internet. and they collect them with their own ways, like using sensors and RGB cameras. But some of them have different formats, so we have to deal with that. Kind of take some time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, since you're interested in sharing, having a consistent way to do this, is there an open API spec for what you want these waypoints to be and how they're delivered?
Can you repeat your question? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Is there a standard around how these waypoints are delivered in your APIs so that everybody can use the same API to do the same waypoints?
Yeah. So our the information we need from the data sets is actually just two things: the RGB images and some kind of the GPS informations. So the waypoints is like the difference between those points is, for now we have to set it for like every 5 seconds, because different data sets have different heads and different frequency to take the photos. We have standardized parameters for that. So if someone just send a raw images, send the raw videos, we can crop it into our standardized parameters and use that to have to do the waypoints. So I guess for this question is, yes, we do have a standardized API for the waypoint stuff. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'm interested in open APIs, and so I thought this was really cool, the simulation of vehicles and their predictive future through waypoints. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, cool. Because it's like using real world data, like most of them are in simulations, so we want to try to deal with in the real world data, which is more useful.
Okay, thank you very much, Shun. If you could stop sharing, then we'll move on to the next speaker.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, I'm going to murder your name. Neng Neng, are you on?
Hi.
Could you
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you correct my pronunciation of your name? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's Neng Neng. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Sorry, I don't have camera on my computer, so I guess I have to. Can I share my screen right now?
Yes, go ahead and share your screen. Nung Nung is going to do a presentation of his project on transformer-based advanced persistent threats detection.
Okay.
So we don't see it yet. Oh, here it comes.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
Hi, everyone. This is Neng Neng. I'm also a senior student. Sorry, I'm also a senior student majoring in computer engineering in BU, and I'm going to introduce my project during this summer, which is the transformer-based advanced persistent threat detection system. And before that, I want to special thanks for the Red Hat for this opportunity, and my mentors, Professor Alan Liu and Leslie Zhou, who is my PhD mentors. Okay, so first, what is advanced persistent threat? Advanced persistent threat is a broad term used to describe the attack activities of intruders establishing an illegal long-term presence on a network to get highly sensitive data. And this type of attacks typically target large enterprises or government networks. So a successful APT attack can be broken down into 3 stages: the network infiltration, expansion of attackers' presence, and the extraction of mass data. And all these 3 stages are without being detected. So to deal with this kind of low and slow pattern attack, instead of using traditional system call or log adjacent system event analysis, we use whole system data provenance to study it. Whole system data provenance has several benefits to analyzing APT attack. Its full historical context of a system from a connected whole system graph saves all the detailed information we need to discover the attack, as well as its preserved causal relationship among the system subjects and objects enables us to dig deeper into the connections between the system actions. However, analyze whole system data provenance to find APT attacks still face some major challenges. The first is find this kind of low and slow attack in a huge system data is certainly like finding needles in haystack. As I said before, APT attacks are an imperceptible infiltration and extraction process, which means the actual attack action is very small compared to the overall system behavior. And this results in a very unbalanced data and also very hard to distinguish malicious and benign behavior. And second, there is simply just too much information in the whole system data, including many duplicate nodes and edges, as well as information that is for us very difficult to use. And this creates a big challenge for our data processing, and also the graph formed by the whole system data provenance is too huge, which makes us run into difficulties in graph computation as well. And the third is the causal relationship obtained from the graphs are also complex. The length of some relationships can be very long and complicated, which makes generating and learning sequences difficult as well. Before us, there were some existing approach trying to use whole system data provenance to catch APT attacks, but they all failed to really address the previous stated challenges. Some rule-based approaches try to find attacks through human-specified rules, but this approach requires a great deal of human expert knowledge and is difficult to deal with zero-day attack. And the previous learning approach was not perfect either. They have very high requirements for labeling and need to clearly separate what is malicious and what is benign in the complex system behavior. However, as I mentioned before, it is very difficult to classify malicious and benign clearly in such a complicated system data. So the previous learning approach tends to experiment on its own simulated data instead of the public or open source data set. So our goal is we want to find a systematic learning methodology that learns patterns of attacks more generally and effectively in real-world scenario, so that our models can be trained in the inference layer and deployed to servers to detect and prevent attacks. In order to achieve this goal, our solution needs to satisfy some requirements. The first is because in the real world, it is difficult to find a complete labeled data set. So even when the data is partially labeled, higher accuracy still need to be achieved using our system. The second one is our model needs to be powerful enough to capture the long-term causal changes and patterns in the data. And the third is our solution needs to be general and intelligent enough to work with different data and different systems without additional human analysis and a mutual intervention. So before introducing our system, I will briefly go through our the data set we are using. So we are using DARPA dataset. This data was collected from a network of hosts during a 2-week-long engagement of the DARPA Transparent Computing Program. And the engagement involved various teams responsible for collecting audit data from different platforms such as Linux and Windows. And they launching attacks during the engagement period and analyzing the data to detect attacks and perform forensic analysis. So there are a couple of benefits using this DARPA dataset. The first one is this data is highly transparent and is derived from simulated attack exercise, which is useful for presenting the realistic attacks. And the second is this data record and preserve the provenance of all system elements and components. And this data contains over more than 1 terabyte of data, and this is a lot of data available for our research. So I will do a quick overview of our system. After getting our input data, we will first do some data processing, which includes forming a complete system graph, extracting the sequence, and labeling the data according to the timestamp. After finishing the data process, we have the human readable data. But how are we gonna transfer those data to machine readable data is hard. We use graph clustering and automatic tokenizer here to transfer our data, and these two approaches will be further explained later. So after we tokenize the samples, we have the data that model can learn from. And we will use the partially labeled data to feed into our transformer-based semi-supervised learning framework to recursively learn from it until all the data is labeled with high accuracy. But during this process, we are facing some challenges. The first is how we gonna tokenize the system log. There are several mature methods to solve the tokenization in traditional NLP. The sentences are either divided directly by spaces or by the dictionaries. But none of this method work when we deal with the system path. If we separate the system path directly with dash, the number of tokens will explode since we have thousands of files and directories. And so we gotta come up with a rule that is generalized enough to handle different dataset and system. The previous work, which is Atlas, is also another learning-based approach. They manually define the token vocabulary, but it's not gonna work because a lot of system logs cannot be classified into one category. And also this process needs a lot of human knowledge and effort to analyze and design it for every single data set, which is not generalized enough for our purpose. So our solution is the automatic tokenizer. We first form a tree of all the system paths that appear in the dataset, and then we select the nearest legal ancestor of each path as its token. So how we gonna define this path, this directory is legal or not? There will be very many random files and directories in the system, and they may only appear a very small number of times, which is not useful for our model to learn. And we will set a threshold. Right here, the example is 500. We will use this threshold to figure out the paths that appear enough times. Otherwise, the path will be considered illegal. So here is the example. Suppose we have two system paths. They are different files under the same directory, which is the postfix. And they will find the nearest legal ancestor, which is the postfix, as their tokenized. So these two paths will have the same tokenization. However, if we have another path, which is the mail file under the fixed directory, but we can see that this fixed directory only occurs 12 times, which is much less than our threshold. So we will consider this fix as an illegal path. So we will token this system path as a var-spoon instead of the var-spoon-fix. So by using this method, we can automatically generate tokens in any dataset and system, and we can use threshold to control the number of tokens. So here is another challenge, the graph information embedding. Our graph generated from the system data is huge. There are millions of nodes and edges in it. And the previous work Atlas only used graph. They didn't use all of the information from the graph. They only use the graph to generate sequence, which depends on human rules and also can lose important information from the graph. The way we use graph is that we are trying to explore more deeply about the logical relationships inside the graph. We want to know the relationship between nodes, and we use node-to-vec, an algorithm that learns continuous feature representation for the nodes and then clusters the nodes using the k-means. This way, we preserve the association between the nodes, and we also greatly induce the number of tokens that would result from directly tokenize the ID of the nodes. And the next challenge is how we gonna learn this long-term stealthy attack sequence. We and some existing approaches have tried LSTM, but LSTM model has certain requirements for the length of sequence. For longer sequence, model will tend to forget the information that are too far behind, which leads to poor learning results. So to solve this problem, we chose transformer as our model. And transformer model is designed to learn the structural correlation of data changes over a long period of time, which is a great fit for detecting the APT attacks. But dealing with the model, we have the problem of labeling, because in real world, most APT dataset does not have labels or clean labels available. The previous work, they depend on clean, fully labeled data, but we know that in the real world, we may only get a small percentage of data that is labeled, and the rest of them are unlabeled data. So to deal with it, we develop a self-improved semi-supervised learning framework to solve the problem of missing labels in real-world data. We will initially only input a small portion of the data that is labeled by our rule and let the model to learn it and predict the label of the remaining unlabeled data. Then we will recursively do this process for a few rounds to achieve to make our training data to achieve a higher label accuracy. So based on the result we have right now, we are working the test on the DARPA carded dataset. We can see that the previous work results were very poor, and this mainly because of the fact that their tokenized rule could not fit into this dataset, and their module also could not effectively learn the long-term causal relationship. And we conducted experiments using both LSTM and transformer model, and we found that the transformer model could achieve a higher test accuracy. So what we have achieved. So we build an automatic tokenizer for different dataset and system, and we applied graph clustering to deal with the complex whole system data provenance to get the information we want. And also we have this transformer-based semi-supervised learning framework. And the results from now looks pretty fine. So the next step we will further tuning the transformer model and increase the recode matrix to over 0.95. The recode is significantly important because we can tolerate some false positive, but we can't miss any potential attack activities. And second is we will further test the semi-supervised learning framework and its efficiency. And we will, after all this work, we will wrap up our work and write the paper and submit to Usenix Security 2023. So thanks again for Red Hat for this opportunity, and yeah, thank you guys for listening my project.
Thank you, Nung. Does anyone have any questions? Nung, do you have any intention of running this in a live system anywhere, or are you only intending to run with DARPA data sets that were previously collected?
Oh, so I said the DARPA data set they have 5 data set in it, and now we are only running this system on the carded data, but we will also test our system on other data set to see how generalized our system works, and after that we can, put this system on the cloud, and we can deploy this system on various servers.
Very interesting. Thanks. So I guess you're in it for the long haul, huh?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, if you can stop sharing your screen then, we'll go on to our last speaker,
Okay.
which is Julia Hua. Hi, Julia.
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
So Julia is going to speak about network accelerated in-memory key value store live migration.
Yes.
Thanks. And I can see your slides, so go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Hua. I'm a junior majoring in computer engineering at Boston University. And thank you, Red Hat, for this opportunity. So this summer, I worked with Professor Alan Liu and PhD student Zhang Zhuo at BU to build a key value live migration prototype. So there are many in-memory key value stores, such as Redis, Memcached, and Apache Cassandra. For our project, we used Redis. The goal of key value live migration is to migrate key value pairs from a source server to a destination server while still being able to execute client requests. And this is a crucial component for cloud systems to achieve high throughput and low latency demands. Typically, the source server is overloaded with client requests, and the destination server is idle or underloaded. So to more effectively service client requests, the workload, which often dynamically scales up and down, should be more evenly distributed among the servers. Additionally, moving data that's likely to be accessed together onto one machine reduces the overall load on a cluster of machines, because the client will only need to issue a request to one server rather than to many servers. There are 3 main existing approaches. The first approach is source-driven, also called pre-copy. The second approach is destination-driven, also called post-copy. And the third approach is a hybrid of the previous 2 approaches. The first approach is the source-driven approach. In this case, during migration, the source machine continues to execute all client requests while incrementally migrating the data to the destination server. And this involves the source server taking a snapshot of its entire hash table every few seconds and logging any client requests in between the snapshots. When the client makes a write request, the server will need to update its data and resend them to the destination. Once enough of that data has successfully migrated, there's typically a period of downtime, which the source server stops accepting client requests and the final updated data is migrated to the destination machine. And once this is all completed, ownership is transferred to the destination machine. The advantage of this is that when migration begins, client requests can still be serviced without much disruption, since the source machine has all of the data. However, the source server is typically already overloaded, now not only with the client requests, but also dealing with migrating data. And this can make migration and servicing client requests less effective and slower. Additionally, continuously resending updated data is inefficient. And near the end of migration, there's possibly downtime. The second approach is destination-driven. In this case, when migration begins, ownership is immediately transferred to the destination machine. And this means that client request goes to the destination server. The destination machine can service write requests immediately, but it can't service read requests until the corresponding data has successfully migrated to the destination server. This greatly increases reading latency, especially at the beginning of migration. And this also requires on-demand pulling of data from the source to the destination server. The advantage of this is that, contrary to the source-driven approach, the source does not need to repeatedly resend data whenever it's updated or written to. However, the disadvantage is that at the beginning of migration, no data has migrated to the destination server. And this means that the destination has to pull the requested data from the source in order to service those read requests, and that increases the initial latency. So the third approach is a hybrid of the previous two approaches. Both the source and destination machine services requests. This client sends write requests to the destination machine and sends read requests to both the source and destination machine. And the system ensures that client requests can be serviced immediately, even if that data hasn't migrated yet. Once the migration completes, ownership is finally transferred to the destination server. And this approach avoids the performance drop that the destination-driven approach has and uses zero downtime, which the source-driven approach may have. However, it will increase network bandwidth costs because the read request is sent to both the source and the destination servers. So one optimization to this issue is to decrease network bandwidth costs would be to use a top-of-rack or a programmable switch as an indexing service. And since all migration and client request traffic will be routed through the switch can use its limited memory to track the migration progress and frequently requested key value pairs to redirect client requests. Or specifically, if the key value pair has not migrated yet, then the read or write client request can be sent to the source machine. And if the pair has already migrated to the destination server, then the client request can be sent to the destination server instead. The system guarantees that the client receives the most recent key value pair. We have 3 goals for our live migration prototype. The first goal is to be pauseless, so we'd like to service client requests without any downtime. And the second goal is to improve performance by achieving high throughput and low latency while still being able to service those client requests. The third goal is to be resource efficient, and that means having low CPU and memory overheads on the source, destination, and client servers. So we developed an open source migration system prototype, which used the hybrid approach with a programmable switch and is implemented on the in-memory key value store Redis. It's developed on a top-of-rack or TOR switch, which tracks migration progress and directs client requests accordingly. We are using Bloom filters, which is a probabilistic data structure as the indexing table. And as described before, if the key value pair hasn't migrated yet, then the client's requests are sent to the source server. If they have migrated, then requests are sent to the destination server. And I primarily worked on the protocol for migrating data. To migrate data, the hash table in Redis was segmented segmented in several groups, each of which has several buckets, and each group is assigned to a thread to transmit a bucket from the source to the destination server. So next, I'll describe the protocol for migrating data. The first part of the protocol is the source proxy, and the first step is to initialize migration, which is completed by the source proxy sending a UDP packet to the destination proxy. Next, to achieve high performance, multi-threading is used, where the number of threads are chosen by the user. And in-threads are created, and each thread has to establish a Redis connection to access the key value database. Next, each thread is assigned a portion of the key space to scan, and then they create packets with approximately 20 key value pairs and inserts each packet to a concurrent queue. Concurrently, another in-threads takes packets from the queue and sends it to the destination proxy using the UDP protocol. To ensure the packet has migrated, it waits for an acknowledgement from the destination proxy. If it doesn't receive an acknowledgement, then the source has to reset the packet. And finally, once all of the key value pairs have successfully migrated, migration terminates and the destination server is notified. On the destination side, it waits for the source server to send a migration initialization packet. Then, in-threads are created, and each thread has to wait for packets containing key value pairs from the source server. Then it inserts those key value pairs into a concurrent queue. Finally, it replies to the source server with an acknowledgement packet. When the destination receives the migration termination packet from the source server, it stops accepting packets. Meanwhile, concurrently, another in-threads are created, and each thread has a concurrent queue and Redis connection, and using pipelining, each thread inserts the key value pairs into Redis. Next, I looked at the possible performance bottlenecks with using different libraries and commands. On both graphs demonstrate using a single thread to get 10,000 keys from a Redis instance, and this performance was tested on the Cloud Lab machine. On both graphs, the x-axis represents the number of keys scanned, and the y-axis represents the time in milliseconds it takes to scan that number of keys. In the left graph, I used a library called Redis. There are two commands that get keys, keys star and scan. Calling the keys command will get all of the keys at once. However, since this command is a blocking operation, it would require scanning the entire database before executing another operation. On the other hand, the scan command can incrementally iterate over the key space. And even though the keys command yields better performance, the scan command is more fitting for a multi-threading environment. In the right graph, I used a library called Redis++, and the time it takes to get 10,000 keys is on a much larger scale than doing so with the Redis library. So ultimately, we chose the scan command with the Redis library. To improve performance on the source side, we need to scan key value pairs from the Redis hash table concurrently from multiple Redis connections using their scan command. The left figure shows the internal implementation of the Redis dictionary, and the right figure shows how multi-threading will migrate segmented hash tables. The issue with multi-threading is that the Redis scan command is a cursor-based iterator, meaning that each call of the command outputs a cursor value that needs to be used in the subsequent command. And due to how Redis calculates this cursor value is not monotonically increasing, and it's not obvious how the key space should be split between the threads for scanning. So instead, we wrote a similar function that scans according to group ID, a value that is part of the key's hash value and corresponds to each segment of the hash table. And the second bottleneck is inserting key value pairs. Redis has a command called mset, which allows us to insert many key value pairs at a time, instead of one by one, which yields higher latency. I also tested this command using a Cloud Lab machine with a single Redis instance. The two graphs demonstrate inserting key value pairs in different sized batches. In both graphs, the x-axis represents different batch sizes. On the left graph, the y-axis represents the time it takes to insert 1,000 key value pairs with the corresponding batch size. And on the right graph, the y-axis represents the time to insert 10,000 key value pairs with the corresponding batch size. In both figures, the performance stops improving when the batch size reaches approximately 200 key value pairs. Thus, we use the imset command with a batch size of 200 in our code. Pipelining was also used to improve performance of inserting key value pairs. Here are some steps I plan to take next. The first step is to replace UDP with DPDK, which is a kernel bypassing network stack that avoids heavy data copy jobs for CPU and servers. In this case, the user program will manage packet processing instead of repeatedly context switching with the kernel. The second step is to implement priority pool, meaning that hot records or frequently accessed records are pulled from the source to the destination server. And since read requests for these records will only be sent to the destination server instead of both servers, this will decrease the load for the source server and also decrease the network bandwidth. And the third step is to enable switch to support multi-key operations. And the fourth step is to add a cache in the switch to store frequently requested key value pairs, so that the next time the client requests one of these pairs, the switch can immediately service the key value pair without sending the request to the servers. And the source code can also be found at the bottom of the slide. Here are the sources I used in this presentation. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Red Hat, for funding the project. Are there any questions?
Okay, I don't see any questions. I would advise you, Julia, to look at DPDK information that's on the research.redhat.com site, because we've had several projects that students have done with DPDK before, and you might save yourself some time checking that.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that.
Super. If there are no other questions, okay. I thank all of you students for presenting. It's been great to hear your results, and really happy to have you involved in research. And please keep participating in the Collaboratory as you go through your school. Thank you very much for joining this rig, and we'll see you next month. And the agenda for next month's rig will be posted on research.redhat.com. Thank you. Bye.